What's up, boys and girls? It's your guy RaDuhKewl, and today I am starting what possibly could become a series on the channel called RaDuhKewl Rants. And pretty much these are going to be completely unscripted videos where I just pretty much do exactly what the series title says. Rant to you guys about a certain topic, whether it's video games, anime, shows, media, whatever it might be. Because today's topic will actually cover not just video games but also media, so let's jump right into it. For today, there's been a topic that's been circulating a lot, especially with the recent news of Pokemon, the anime, changing out Ash Ketchum. I wanted to just do a little rant discussion video about the whole topic of swapping out protagonists. This is something that I personally encountered watching anime, playing video games, and just seeing it in plenty of different, outlets of media. So let's jump right in. As a fair warning, there will be many spoilers in this video because I can't talk about the protagonist swaps without spoiling their franchises. So there's gonna be 5 main animes and games that I focus on. So if you have any interest in their stories, you haven't beaten them, you haven't watched them, now is your time to probably click away from the video once I list the 5. Again, if you have any interest in any of these 5, do not watch this video. I will be blatantly spoiling the protagonist swaps. 1 would be Bayonetta 3. We're going to be talking about the swap between Cereza and Viola, however you say her name. Number 2 would be God of War Ragnarok. We're going to be talking about the looming protagonist swap between Kratos and his son Atreus. Number 3 would be the anime Death Note, where we talk about the protagonist swap between L and Nier. Number 4 would be, of course, as discussed earlier, Pokemon, the swap from Ash Ketchum to these 2 new, I believe they're unnamed protagonists, and if they're named, I didn't look into it enough. And last but not least, everybody's favorite, the game of the year a year or 2 ago, Last of Us Part 2. We're going to talk about the protagonist swap from Joel and Ellie to everyone's favorite character, Abby. So if you have any interest in any of those series, those video games or animes, again, spoiler warning, click away. We're gonna jump into this rant. So, protagonist swaps. The protagonist in general is just, the character, the hero, someone that we spend possibly literally years of our life, in Ash Ketchum's case, just journeying with. We see them at their lowest of the lows. We see them at the highest of the highs. I'll just continue using Ash in this scenario, but we see him as a small boy in Pallet Town and, just growing, gathering his Pokemon, sticking with Pikachu by his side, being the weakest of the weak, the newest trainer out there, to just recently, a few weeks, months ago, becoming the Pokemon World Champion. And now they're going to decide to swap him out. We'll talk about that. So my personal opinion is protagonist swaps are okay if they're done properly. Out of those 5 that I've listed, there's only 1 that I think is being set up properly for a protagonist swap, and it's God of War Ragnarok. So let's start with that. What is an example of a good protagonist swap? Now again, this is all subjective. What I think does not mean it's going to be right, and if this video blows up or gains some new traction, I'm sure there's going to be some heated comments down below that say my takes are trash. But I want to start with God of War Ragnarok. So God of War focuses on Kratos, of course, the protagonist of the series. He has his original trilogy of games, a bunch of spin-off games that are on the PlayStation Vita, PSP, and of course he now has his reboot games, God of War 2018 and the most recent God of War Ragnarok. Now, Kratos is still the protagonist of God of War, but I feel like you'd be, living under a rock if you don't see a protagonist swap to his son, Atreus, right on the horizon. It could possibly be that Ragnarok was Kratos' last game, and I don't know if they're going to take the approach like Atreus will only have spin-off games, and who knows, maybe Kratos is going to stick around forever. Maybe he will continue to be the protagonist. But if you beat God of War Ragnarok, the ending really hinted, at least to me, that Atreus is next in line to be God of War's protagonist. The game basically ends with Kratos finally, letting Atreus have his freedom. And Atreus kind of looks back, Kratos looks at him, you kind of have this cool little moment of like, man, he's not just boy anymore. He's his own young man. And Atreus actually walks away. You can't play as him anymore at the end of the game. Is left to Freya and Kratos, and you can only assume that Atreus is leaving to go on his own adventure now. That I'm sure, as a gamer and a fan of God of War, we will be able to play that adventure with Atreus as the protagonist. Now, obviously, swapping out Kratos or any character that is beloved is gonna get heat. That's some big shoes to fill with Kratos. But I do think, compared to the other 4 media protagonist swaps that we're going to talk about, I do think God of War is setting it up right in terms of the slow burn swap. Atreus was first introduced to us in God of War 2018 completely as, you know, kind of like how Ellie is in Last of Us Part 1. Your companion, but you don't really play as them, maybe like for a mission or 2. And then obviously in Ragnarok, Atreus is still more so just a companion, but he does get eased into a more of a playable role where he has his own little skill tree to upgrade, and he does actually have a good chunk of story missions that you play as Atreus. I definitely think Atreus is gonna have his own game, whether it's a side game or a mainline God of War. Maybe he becomes the new God of War. I don't know how they're gonna do it. He's already a god in his own right. I warned you about the spoilers. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have much left to say about God of War Ragnarok other than I think they're setting it up good for the protagonist swap with the slow burn. But now on to the other 4. So again, Death Note, Last of Us Part 2, Pokemon anime, and Bayonetta 3. Let's jump to Bayonetta 3 because that came out just a month before God of War. I am a big fan of the Bayonetta franchise. I've played the OG game, I played Bayonetta 2 like 3 times, and I played Bayonetta 3. Gameplay wise, I actually do think that Bayonetta 3 is the best in the series, the best in the trilogy. I found the gameplay to be very fun, and you know, I really enjoyed my time playing Bayonetta 3. My issue with the game is the end. They do a protagonist swap. So Bayonetta isn't actually our protagonist's name. The main lady, the Bayonetta that you see, is actually Cereza. So Cereza has been our protagonist throughout all 3 games. But at the end of the 3rd game, she presumably dies. I'm pretty sure she's dead. I don't know. I mean, hey, I don't know if you're watching this Raccoon X, big Bayonetta YouTuber, but he's probably dogging on me like, you don't know the lore. I never know the lore in anything. But so basically Cereza is presumed to be dead, and the new Bayonetta is going to be Viola, aka Cereza's daughter. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that at all, because unlike God of War, Viola wasn't in Bayonetta 1 or 2. She was completely new and added to Bayonetta 3, and now she's Bayonetta. So like, that's a good example of what I believe to be a bad protagonist swap. It actually ruined Bayonetta 3 for me. Like, I've had plenty of time to soak it in and think about it, and I was just not a fan of that ending. I'm not a fan of knowing that the next game, if there's a Bayonetta 4 or whatever it's gonna be, I have to play as Viola. I definitely thought her gameplay was fun, but she's no Cereza. And if at least Viola was in 1 and 2 and it had the slow burn like they're doing with Atreus, I wouldn't mind it as much. I'm not opposed to a new Bayonetta, but I'm not a fan of introducing a brand new character and they are the protagonist. That is where we're gonna cross over to the other media outlets because they all do the same thing. Let's look at the Pokemon anime. Ash Ketchum has been our protagonist for decades. I'm pretty sure the anime started before I was born. I was born in 1998. I think the anime started before I was born, if not somewhere around that time. We've known Ash for well over 2-3 decades now, and he won the championship. I know fellow N10 member Nintendo Cisco is so passionate about this, but pretty much he won the championship. I think he's got like another season or a couple episodes left, and then he's out. There's gonna be a new protagonist, brand new, freshly introduced, which some people think is good. I'm kind of very neutral because I don't really watch the anime, but in terms of my ideology, that is gonna be a bad protagonist swap. because these characters, you know, they're brand new. Like, at least if you took like Brock or Misty from like the OG anime and like we're like, okay, Pokemon's not gonna focus on them, maybe people wouldn't mind as much, and at least I wouldn't, again, due to my ideology that I'm fighting for here, just because, you know, we've already been introduced to them, we've known them. It would be more of a slow burn, but we're getting completely new protagonists, and that's got people up in outrage. So the other two media outlets I was going to talk about. Let's talk about The Last of Us Part 2. You robbed Ghost of Tsushima of Game of the Year, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the protagonist swap. So Last of Us Part 2, very controversially, kills Joel right at the start of the game. So Last of Us Part 1, it's strictly following the story of Joel and Ellie. You clearly have the slow burn in that game to Ellie. You know, it's pretty much Ellie's story the whole time with you playing as Joel. So obviously as the gamer, the fan, you grow an attachment to Joel since you play as him, but you also grow an attachment to Ellie. And then Last of Us Part 2, boom, Joel is dead, you're not playing as Ellie, which that I think people were okay with. Even when we saw the trailers for the game, we knew we would be playing as an older version of Ellie, and that didn't really seem to get people upset. What got people upset was the protagonist swap with, yet again, another brand new character, freshly introduced, Abby. Now, Abby basically comes into this franchise, never seen before, kills Joel, your beloved first game protagonist, and then as the cherry on top, you have to play as Abby, as the protagonist in Last of Us Part 2 for pretty much the entire second half of the game. You start the game as Ellie, then you play, like, you basically replay the game as Abby, and like that did not have people happy. So once again, Last of Us goes into my category of bad protagonist swaps. If you took someone from the first game, like Ellie, if you just had Ellie was in the first game, she was supposed to be the protagonist of the second game, I think that would have been fine. You know, some people may have been upset, they're like, but I wanted to play as Joel. Just go replay the first game. You know, at least Ellie would have been the slow burn, but the fact that you also had to just mash in a brand new character that kills Joel and you're gonna play as them, I think that's a bad swap. But alright, let's get on to the last media outlet I wanted to talk about, which was Death Note. So Death Note, obviously I'm a big Light Yagami guy. I'm big on Death Note, absolutely love that anime, an absolute anime classic, but they did the controversial protagonist swap with L. So L is the main like detective of the series, and he pretty much goes through halfway of the anime, and even though I was on Team Light Yagami, I still had a respect for L, because he was there from the start, working to try to figure out who Kira is, and then L dies. So you think Light Yagami wins about halfway through the anime, he holds L in his arms, in fact I even have a shirt with that iconic moment, but then they do the protagonist swap. We're introduced to yet again a brand new, fresh character called Nier, and Nier goes on to pretty much win it all. And he kind of, at least in my opinion, steals L's credit. Like, obviously, you know, Nier was being, like, trained. I forget the backstory, but he was, like, being, you know, he was under, like, L's house, something. I don't know. It's almost like he was, like, his predecessor. Yeah, training under L. So, I get it. Like, I get, you know, like, what they were trying to do. But I found it to be a bad protagonist swap. I did not enjoy the second half of the anime, partially because I wanted Light to win, but also mainly because, you know, I just didn't like Nier getting all the credit. Like, a kid outsmarted the mastermind Light Yagami. I didn't like that. So at this point in the video, I guess my rant should show that Ragnarok was the only really good example of a protagonist swap that I could think of. I'm sure there's many movies and TV shows out there that have protagonist swaps that I could have looked into deeper, but I already had 5 and this video is already getting long. So let me know down below, what do you guys think of the protagonist swap? Do you agree with me that it's better to take that slow burn approach that God of War seems to be taking, hinting at Atreus becoming the new face of the God of War franchise? Or did you think any of the other 4, the Pokemon anime, Death Note anime, Last of Us Part 2, or Bayonetta 3? Do you disagree with me? Do you think that any of those were, you know, actually a good protagonist swap, etc.? I want to see those comments. Just letting me have it, letting the topic have it. Let me know your ideology of a good versus bad protagonist swap. Do you think this entire video just, you know, is pointless? Like, you think, it doesn't matter, I'll watch whoever is the main character for whatever franchise as long as it's got a good story and good gameplay? Let me know. I'm curious. But alright guys, that's it from me. Again, these were completely unscripted. I had like bullet points to remember who to talk about, but that's it. So I do want to start doing more of these RaDuhKewl Rants where I just rant to you guys about a topic. So one last time, let me know what you thought about this topic of swapping protagonists in gaming, anime, and media overall. I hope to see you guys in the next one, whether it's a gameplay video, another RaDuh rant, or whatever it might be. Thank you guys for watching. Stay RaDuhKewl. Let me know your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.
Come from a town where most of the people are so close-minded. They go into school and they work in a job, but they don't even like it. I won't be put in a box. Nobody telling me what I should rock.